criteria for photographer shooting was they had to shoot with a mobile device. They weren't allowed to shoot with DSLR. Like, what's the deal with that sort of thing? Like, more and more you see the transition of professional photographers either only posting iPhone work or phone work on Instagram and social media, and then leaving their DSLR stuff more, obviously, their professional work.
I think we should point to Jarrad, who has over 100,000 Facebook fans. So I think Jarrad has a really interesting perspective on this.
I think the reality is that social media is changing everything now. It's not just about the quality of the photo. It's also about your following and what else you can bring to it. So, what's to say that a professional photographer who does really high quality photos and has lots of experience, are they worth more than someone shooting an iPhone and has 1 million Instagram followers? So, we can complain about it or whatever, but this is just the reality of what value a picture can bring, and it's not just the quality of the photo anymore.
There's another American photographer, Adam Elmakias. Some of you might have heard of him. Like, he's got hundreds of thousands of Instagram followers and social media followers. It seems to me the trend now is, if you want a long-term career in the music photography game, like, one of the paths is to just like get huge social media following. And he builds into his deals with artists that he tours with. He doesn't take a huge fee up front, but what he'll say is, every time you post a photo, you must tag me. Yeah. So every time it goes on Twitter, every time it goes on Instagram, it's like photo by @Elmakias.
And then it's all added up.
And now he has so much following, and he has merch and everything. Well, Dan, so he has different revenue streams.
He started you're probably one of the first people to have a locatable website that had photography content of this variety in Australia, right? Like, you pretty much were.
I started that and then just got bored, stopped pushing it so much.
That's it, but it was, it's worked for you in the sense that everybody knew about Boudist, and some of the people here received, I think, advice from you online, like you.
Was that Jarrad?
When I first started shooting music, I went to his without before knowing, I was going, man, he's so good. One day I'm going to be that good. Yeah, so good.
It was as well.
Yeah, and
this is my story.
Yeah.
Like, one day.
When I
idol.
Why I got into music photography was I was actually, my passion was music, so I was writing about music, I was playing in bands, and then eventually I realised that music photography was a much cooler job than sitting at the back of a notepad. So on one of my accreditation forms for a big festival in Perth, there was a little box that said, so I took I'm a reviewer, I need a pass, and then there was another box that said, are you a photographer? Or do you need a photography pass? And I was like, yeah, I guess I need one. This is before, this is 6 years ago. And to my surprise, they gave me a media pass, and I didn't have a camera and I didn't know anything about photography. So I just quickly, I asked my friend, I borrowed their low-end DSLR, and I just Googled how to take concert photos or something like that. And Dan's article popped up. That's how I learned. That was how I taught myself the basics, and I just heard murmurs around here. Did we all kind of just like read Dan's article?
I believe Pat literally did. At a gig. Please tell the story, because it's kind of funny.
Oh no, like when I was first starting out, I just Wes, who I worked with at Hobo, he's like, man, you got to check out this website. Just look what he does and try to copy him as much as you can. Because if you copy someone who's better than you, you're going to get better.
Yeah.
But then put your own spin on it. So I just looked at all Dan's photos and I just tried to emulate what he did. I'm still not there yet, but one day.
Well, I think that's a good point about, you've got to push your work out there. Don't think you have special knowledge and that you should keep all your secrets to yourself. I think everyone benefits, most of all of you who shares the knowledge, by like putting it out there for the world to see. Because then it's like you pushing yourself out through social networking, so Adam gets his work, and how I get my work, is by sharing it. Don't hold on to it thinking that it's like secret knowledge.
What are you going to do, die with like a hard
I'd like to interject something at this point. One problem that I still face is I do hold on to work because I don't feel it's finished. And this is literally me shooting myself in the foot. Don't do what I'm doing. Put it out there even if you don't feel it's finished, even if you don't feel it's perfect, because I have missed a number of opportunities by hanging on to things and not putting my photos out there. And then I've gone back and looked at them 6 months later and gone, man, this is actually not bad. Why didn't I publish this?
Well, that brings us to a good question about retouching and post-production in live event photography, because now that's...
Whatever you do,
everyone's
don't add
getting
lens flare to your photos for the love of
Who
God.
does that?
Peter Ruprecht.
No, I don't
Peter
know.
Ruprecht is a very talented American photographer who does a lot of commercial stuff and a lot of fashion. I was shooting alongside him at Burning Man. A lot of his shots came out of Burning Man, and he'd gone and he'd added lens flare in post-production, and I saw the originals on the back of his camera when we were sitting in the dust, like scrolling through the backs of our photos going, yeah man, these are good. And then after, like a month after Burning Man, I saw a lot of his stuff come out, and he'd gone and added lens flare, and they don't need it. If you ever use the lens flare filter in Photoshop, I will hunt you down.
I think, would it be fair to say that on the panel, all of us use very little post-production for our event photography?
Just contrast, curve, and get one.
Yeah, like just, Lightroom.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I opened a photo in
it's like
Photoshop.
CEO and he's got a big pimple
Yeah.
on his nose, and like he's going to be the one that job next year.
You don't need to do much unless your white balance is out, like it's a bit too
Yeah.
warm or cold.
I think
you just,
for event photography,
Events.
you don't need to. If you're doing studio work or portraits, yes, that needs a little more attention. But event photography...
Sometimes, though, at certain events, there is a little bit of retouching that needs to be done.
Like what?
For certain things. For instance, an artist who will remain unnamed, I shot a portrait of them backstage at an event, and
But
then...
that's not an event photo, it's a portrait.
No, it was at an event, so it did fall under, like, it was in with the rest of the event photos.
I think that's something different, but go on.
The reason it needed to be opened and given 5 minutes in Photoshop was because there was something on their nose that shouldn't have been. And like sometimes Valerie's better, like discretion is something that does step in. And it's like,
So you had to like Photoshop out some coke or something?
No,
Yes.
it's probably a bit of snot, that's fine. No, my virgin mind. Coke, what is
What
coke?
virgin mind?
Most of my, like, I mean, I had certain requests that I couldn't shoot with my left.
Actually, no, I've run into that as well. When I shot Fun, they wouldn't let anyone in the centre of the pit. You were only allowed to shoot from the left and the right. You weren't allowed to shoot from the centre of the pit. They actually had 2 security guards in the pit making sure that you didn't shoot like in this like 3 metre gap right from the front of the stage. And it was like, do you just not like that angle of yourself? Or I didn't quite get it because he was moving around so much that it didn't really matter. But
Special sort of challenge.
yeah, it's like, mate, you aren't that big that you need to make such ridiculous demands.
You just shoot a lot and you colour for celebrities, I think that's how it works. And they just, like, it depends who you're shooting for. If you're shooting, for time out, you obviously have to be really selective and don't put anything up of a celebrity where they don't look very good because they won't appreciate it. And, or otherwise, you just shoot a lot and they kind of, if you're shooting for them, they pretty much won't be allowed to put photos out unless they're approved. Even still, I mean, those photos I was a little bit about because I don't actually own the China until I was shooting before the China. Yeah. So there's always going to be
And actually, going back to what Kai was saying about she shot herself in the foot by not sharing stuff, and me saying you should share everything. I think don't share everything. If you shoot an event, share like 1 or 2 pictures from it. Like if you might shoot 500 pictures at a festival, publish 5 or less. Like just really, really strict with your edit.
Editorials.
Like maybe if it's for Instagram, post 1 picture. Don't flood your stream. But if you've got your own website, you might do a Facebook gallery. Then you can afford to do more. But just be really strict with your edit. Get it out there, but only let people see your most awesome picture.
I found with galleries on our website, Hobo, would put up maybe from a whole
Shorter is
day,
better.
we'd do like 30, 40 photos, whereas another website would put up 300. It's like, who wants to go through 300 photos? It dilutes them all. So you want to put up the strongest images that you've got, which tell a narrative of the day. Keep it nice and concise.
I'm going to second that. Like, I see a thing that's very common among young emerging photographers is they get very excited when they shoot an event or anything like portraits, and they just
Get mad, trigger happy.
flood Facebook with it. That's the quickest way for me to click unfollow on someone is if it just gets annoying.
Yeah.
That's also a quick question going back to financial services stuff in the music business. We're talking about signing the, and also talking about selling photos. I don't have anything to say about like a practical part of actually making a business. Like, do you have to go out and chase assignment work from websites and publications, or is it just as
I don't think people are that further question.
The question is essentially, do you have to chase magazines and publications for assignment work, or are you able to sell print or digital photography after the fact to band managers and to commercial outlets on spec, essentially?
I've done a bit of both in that I'm usually paid to shoot something, but some things like shot this thing called Wall International, and it was this great sporting event, hipster sporting event, but and then I ran some pictures, but everyone loved them so much because I like prints from. I don't really sell prints, but if you do shoot something and they're great photographs, people can end up buying them.
That's another option too.
So you can shoot it for love and then sell it, or you get hired to shoot it.
This brings up a statement. You are never ever going to make a living shooting live music. That's, sorry to be blunt, but that's the case. So what you will do, what you will make a living doing is shooting portraits, shooting studio work. So, and that you can't shoot that and then sell it to the artist later. Unless you're shooting an editorial assignment for a magazine, and you get it. But more than likely, you need to shoot for the artist. So basically, if you want to make money, you're not going to make money by selling stuff after you've taken it. You need to be commissioned. That's my opinion about the only way to ever make decent money.
And Dan kind of knows because Chevell runs Blue Murder, his wife, and he is always in studio shooting as well.
Yeah, my wife Chevell, she doesn't really do events, but she shoots album covers for all the big name artists. She's done press shots just recently for like Preachers, Missy Higgins, Megan Washington, like Empire of the Sun. So you might not know her because she's not out shooting events. She's not on Pass the Ladder, but she works for the record labels and earns vastly more than most of us in this room.
Just one last thing with the selling prints and stuff like this. This is quite far removed from music, but art photography has become its own thing. And this photographer Sydney Sherman, 3 years ago, sold a print for $4 million. So that could really cover your whole.
Well, can we talk a bit of it? Because you won that landscape prize, and I think this is the ideal moment to talk about that photo. It's an unfortunately small version of the photo. It would be nice to have a little larger, but that's the one there.
But
maybe so to run through it.
So I was at a work conference in Vegas, and I took this photograph on the roof of my hotel. But I knew it was a great, I knew that it was a great photograph, but do other people recognise that? And then I submitted it to Head On. They pulled me aside after I won it and said, "Oh, look, usually every year we try to we boil the finals photographs down to 3 or 5, and we deliberate for a week because we all just love this picture instantly." Went with it, but that photograph just from that made me $9,000. So that paid for my whole trip overseas and everything. But then I'll have an exhibition with other photographs and people are already wanting to buy it. So hey, maybe I'll sell 1 or 2 or 3 prints for $2, $3, $4,000. So that's the other way of thinking about other ways of making money. So that is just a personal photograph. So I'm not Cindy Sherman. But
you could be Cindy Sherman, man.
It's about consistency and sticking to it and making a name for yourself. You can use social media to make a name for yourself. So people go, oh yeah, I know, Cindy Sherman, she's famous. That's why she commanded $4 million.
I want to, I feel like we've had a fairly long chat and everyone will probably want to have some snacks and maybe some coffee. There are things at the back there. So before we wrap up for the moment, I'd like to do 2 things. One is get any of the photographers here who want to talk about any of the shots that are up on the wall to do so. And otherwise, also, to get you guys to ask some technical questions because you're going to ask things that I am not across. I'm not a professional photographer, nor am I even an amateur photographer. So I have been photographed a lot, but I don't do it from the other side of the lens. So I'd like you to get to the bottom of what you want from these professionals here that you might not be able to get online or otherwise. And I'd really like to maybe do that first, since this will probably be a fairly detailed answer, or series of answers. Anyone got any questions of that variety? Any troubleshooting style things that they need to know? And
yeah, after you go, you shoot a bit or band over here, make track a second and pick out the best, or then you do a one-shot thing, or you wait for that moment?
It's usually a couple at a time. Like I remember when I was starting out, there was a lot of spray and pray, so literally holding the shutter down and just begging that something was going to come out. And the further on you go, like I said, you start to learn when is going to be a good time to take a photo, and you should also do a bit of research beforehand. Like these days, if I'm going to go shoot a concert, I will generally look up I look up YouTube videos of the band performing and see what to expect, because certain bands do go a little all out. Like Gua will spray the crowd with blood, so you might want to be aware of that when you're taking $10,000 worth of gear into a photo pit. Well, obviously fake blood, but still. And then there's bands who are more reserved, for instance, Kanye at his most recent tour didn't have the lights on for the first 3 songs. Thanks, man.
He hates photographers.
He really does. But he had the lights off mostly for the first 3 songs. So literally, anyone who went to shoot that was basically fucked. But these days, it's a little less spray and pray and more wait for the moment. And once you get into it, you get a feel for the timing of things. Some things you can't help but just take photo after photo after photo after photo, usually because it's such a visually rich environment. But the more you do it, the more you start to get into the rhythm of it.
I think spray and pray still works.
Definitely. I'm not saying it doesn't, especially if a strobe is involved.
I shot Rolling Stones the other day, and I was so fucking wowed by it. I was just went nuts. But then I stuck by what I told you guys. I was really strict with my edit. I shot heaps of pictures, but only revealed 8. So it still works.
On a similar note, but not so much from capturing the image side,
Yeah.
data and storage and processing.
Oh.
And D800 shooting 7 megabyte files every time.
Why have you got a D800?
First things first. Learn to make a backup, because backup will be your greatest friend.
Google Raid.
Also, Amazon
I've got
now
this
offer a storage service called Zacalo, which I've just bought into, which is cloud storage accessible from anywhere in the world. It runs me $100 a year, and it's off-site, and
But doing raw files
You're
on
not
there?
going to back up raw files on?
No, I back up TIFF. So I back up
That's
five to
massive.
TIFF. Yeah, don't care.
You're not shooting as much as you couldn't. I wouldn't work.
This comes back.
Storage file.
This comes back to when Jake contacted me to do this. He was like, okay, give me a bunch of photos that you love and a bunch of photos that you hate. And I don't have any work older than about 18 months, because 18 months ago I lost everything due to... it happened again. It happened again actually just before I went to go overseas. What happened was 18 months ago I only had my laptop. That was it. I didn't have a backup drive. Everything fucked out. My hard drive died. Couldn't recover it. Took a data recovery. Couldn't recover it. Then again this year in July, I had one backup drive. And my laptop died one day. I'm like, that's all right. I've learnt my lesson. I've got a backup drive. I hadn't checked my backup in about 2 months. Hadn't done a backup in 2 months, which is also not great. Went to plug it into my spare computer that I just set up, and the little thing goes tick, 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 and doesn't load. And I ended up spending $865 on data recovery. They got everything back. Thank Christ. They got everything back, but it was a very expensive lesson. And whatever you do, back your shit up for the love of God.
8 other hard drives.
Well, now I've got an off-site storage. I also have off-site storage on a server that's located in the city. So I have I can go put my stuff on this server. I can either do it online or I can do it in person. And I also have online cloud storage. The price of online cloud storage per year is relatively low compared to the lesson I just learned. It could have been worse. The problem with my laptop hard drive was just bad sectors. It could have been a hardware fault, which would have run me $2,500. So think about that for a second. To actually have them dismantle the hard drive and repair the platters physically. So that's $2,500 that I'm lucky I didn't have to spend, but it could have been. So back your shit up.
To be specific, I have a system. I have a Synology drive, which is 8 times 4 terabyte drives, and it uses a RAID system. So even if 1 or 2 of the drives fail, that I can just plug in new drives and it'll be fine. I also, because I'm a bit ridiculous, I have another unit called an Arica unit, which is 8 times 3 terabyte drives, and that works on Thunderbolt. And so that's like crazy fast to
but a RAID redundant backup
those are expensive
will not cost
options,
you that much to set up as opposed to the cost of data recovery. So
Yeah. I think it'd be good to link some of this stuff afterwards. Yeah, I think it'd be good to link some of it. Like if you guys
I'll
want
post a
some
link to the
ideas.
Synology
Yeah,
thing on
true.
the event
Yeah.
page.
We'll also be running footers on the video to click through. So if you go to the Music New South Wales website, you'll find a lot of this in case you missed any of it. And these guys will comment and hopefully and all that kind of stuff. Any other? Yeah, sure.
Just in regards to Lightroom, and I know you guys were saying before that you don't do much post-processing of images. Do you find that you sort of create a set of filters and presets that are your look, and then over time you sort of continue to obviously tweak that album or image, but you've got, right, my kind of visual is going to be like this filter. And do you think that that's something that's pretty important, is to maybe work on creating your look in post-processing to put across all your images, instead of people looking at it, they can sort of go, oh, that's that kind of stuff.
But you don't want to put too many filters on it. It just starts looking like crappy Instagram filters after a while. You just want to do a basic curve, contrast, like a little bit of
like a little
saturation.
color tweaks. Like every photo I've got up there on that wall has a Lightroom filter on it, but not so much to the point where you can't distinguish what it is, which a lot of like phone filters do. It's like, hang on, what am I looking at? But it's like, it's something that adds to, like, I think if a filter detracts from the mood of the photo or makes it difficult to discern what you're looking at, then it's pointless. But if it adds to the mood of the photo or to the feel of it, then it's fine.
I think it depends what sort of photographer you are. Like, I think most of us seem to be quite natural in the way we treat things, but there's another music photographer in Perth, Raised by Wolves. What's her name? Sarah
Barlow.
Yeah. She has quite a distinctive treatment she puts on her images, and I think that works for her because she's really consistent with it. I think whatever you do, just be consistent with it, and if you want to put in a filter, then you can own that, and that will become your style. But just, I think, create it and then stick with it, or don't do that, which is what most of us do.
It can also become a trend if you're using one filter and it becomes dated. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's good at the time, and then you look back at it, and it's like,
What was I doing?
oh, good.
like you used to be able to look back and go, oh, that film stock is that. Oh, that was shot in this year of that film. It's that way. It's like, oh, that's Instagram filter. Blah, blah, blah.
Valencia.
If anyone, I used to look, I'm not sure if you do anything else, have you heard of alien skin?
Yeah.
Exposure.
I really like exposure because it creates, like, I don't really like images that look, I do like really sharp images, but I really like using something a bit of a film look. I like a little bit of grain.
That's a little different though. That's emulating something that has existed and does have a classic feel to it. And I love film emulation.
Whatever you do, don't put up the saturation and don't put up the contrast. Like, that's kind of...
Unless that's your look, I think it's all right if you've made an artistic choice that's your style.
Oh, and one thing I think that...
do that very badly, I think.
One thing I think
I
that
agree.
leads into that is consistency. If you are going to add any kind of tweaks to it in Lightroom, Photoshop, whatever, be consistent. Nothing annoys me more than looking at work by somebody else, or even my old work, and it's like same filter, suddenly black and white, and then on something else with a different filter. It's like, whatever you do, maintain consistency. At least if you're publishing one set of photos, maintain consistency across the board through that, because otherwise it looks really unprofessional.
Do we have some more? I'd love to ask some other. Yeah, you've had a few. Yes. That's you.
Just out of curiosity, if you were going to a gig, because I haven't had going to Australia, but if you can only take one body and one lens, what would you take?
One body
She
and
said,
one lens.
if you could only take one body and one lens to a gig, what would you take?
I think people are too obsessed with gear, to be honest. I'm going to just start by prefacing it by saying that I started on a 350D and a kit lens and still got decent pictures. And honestly, I think you can get really good pictures from a really basic
If you're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're not going to take better pictures with better gear, to be honest. If you've got any...
That's not
No,
true.
no.
To an
Any
extent,
entry-level
it is true,
SLR
By your technology.
Any entry-level SLR now is perfectly adequate with a decent lens.
I know, like I started shooting with film, and like 3200 ISO film was like $35.
Yeah, but any entry-level SLR now will shoot with high ISO.
There's no autofocus, and so like as soon as like digital started becoming better, you became a better photographer.
Right.
Yes and no, you still have to have the talent behind it. Like, you still have to have the eye. I've met photographers who have $20,000 worth of gear hanging off their shoulders, and they don't have a clue. Like, they don't know what makes a good photo, and they will publish absolute shit, and it just, all they do is brag about the gear, and it's like, you know all of the signs, and they can tell you down to the very last specification what their gear can do, but they don't have the eye for it. If you have that talent, the gear you're using doesn't necessarily matter. Like, I still pull out a 50D from time to time and shoot on that if I need to. But
I like to go out sometimes with just a 50mm lens. And
yeah,
just
that's
shoot
probably
available for the
one of
whole
my
night.
favourite
Because everyone's
setups.
got a wide lens and a flash. I'm like,
Why
oh,
is that particularly
24 to 70, 2.8 or f4, or 24 to 105 f4.
Mine would be my 50mm.
Yeah, man.
50
Either my
it's
50
sort
or
of
my
like what the eye
24.
sees.
Hang on. I love it. I'm enthused. I don't understand what you're saying. I'm excited by it. But let's just sort of, like, why specifically using a cut down format?
50mm 50mm lens is one of the cheapest lenses you can buy, and it's one of the most simplest glass.
Nifty 50.
Yeah, and it's very similar to what your eye sort of sees. Same sort of focal length. Yeah.
It really does. Like, shooting on a fixed focal length. Shooting on zooms is great, and it gives you a certain amount. It gives you a flexibility that you wouldn't otherwise have, but it does make you lazy. It does give you the option, instead of moving your body, you just move the gear, and it's like you should be more spatially aware of where you are in position to your subject. And I bought a nifty 50 as one of my first lenses, and I think it was one of my best teachers.
Everyone should have a 50mm here if you're shooting.
If you don't, go spend $150 and buy one.
It's not going to break the bank.
I'm going to ask this gentleman here, just in front of you in the white shirt here. This is our last question. That's you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not much about technical stuff, but with your photography name, like with portfolio, do you think that you should use your own name, or does it matter?
Well, if I could answer that, with our website Hobo, we all started with, well, I'll just answer from my sorry. In Hobo, we all had code names. We wanted to be anonymous. We wanted no one to know who we are. And I just started up my own website, which is I am Patrick Stevenson. So, goes to show how far I've come. I want to be known now. I want to make money.
Similar to that, I work with a collective named Vona. This has kind of backfired a little bit in the sense that now sometimes when I'm out shooting, people will come up to me and ask, "Oh, you're Vona, aren't you?" My editor thinks it's absolutely hilarious because it drives me crazy. But it's also, it's like, that's I work for them, I work with them, but that's not my name. So... to an extent it can backfire, but at the same time I do like having the strength of that. I do like working with the photographers I work with, so...
I think...
I was hired this guy for the brag, I took a risk on him, and suddenly he became sexy ninja monkey. and like, it was around the time where Cobra Snake was becoming a big thing. It's like, yeah, Cobra Snake, that's cool. I've met the guy, he's a funny dude, does that thing. This guy was sexy ninja monkey.
It's not as good.
And like he told me this in front of my girlfriend at the time. She goes, "No, you're not." He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're not sexy or a ninja." And he's just like, oh. So like, it kind of like, does it sound pretentious? Can you live up to your level of pretension? Is it ridiculous? Is it cool?
My point is, if you want to start a collective like Vona, if you want to start a business like Hobo, like where you're a pool of photographers, use a broad name. If it's just you, use your own name. That's going to last you for the rest of your life. Whereas a broad name, you might start using it, and then like Pat realize, well, nobody knows who I am. You know, you want to put it under your own name.
It takes a lot of energy to build a brand as well, and you sort of want to be happy with what you've built. You don't want to change that, because then you've got to start from scratch.
Any other thoughts, guys?
I use my own names because I'm really indecisive, and I know that anything I come up with, I'll hate it pretty soon. Good and bad. It's good because people know my name, and that's always good for branding and everything. But bad because you can't. Like, I'm stuck with my name. I can't send someone else to be my backup photographer instead of me. So there's been times when I wish I could have done that, and if I had a brand name versus my name, I could, you kind of farm out things to other people under your brand. But
I've thought about that as well, because as a photographer, when you're not shooting, you're not making an income. Or if you want to ever sell a business, like you could probably sell like Hobo or Vona because it's just a brand and get other photographers to shoot for it. But if you're always operating under your own name, if you're not shooting, you're not making money.
Lookalikes. Body doubles, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that's part of why Vona works, is because there are 9 of us, but we all work very closely in concert. So if, say, we have a regular gig that one of us, the person who usually does it, can't attend, can't shoot. Like, for instance, I was out of the country for 3 months, and my regular gigs had to be covered by another one of us. And the beauty of working together so closely is one of the others can go in and they can shoot in my stead. And because we do all use Lightroom, we do all have the same access to the same presets that we've all developed together, the photos look the same. So it offers a level of consistency to a client that a sole trader, a sole creative cannot deliver. At the same time, it can be really frustrating working that closely with other creatives who do have a different view, and sometimes we have brought people on board that just haven't worked out. But I mean, these are risks that you take. So,
Kiera, you've just started your own website, please.
I don't know, actually. I guess my logo is a nice big KC no initials, but I'm not sure. I'm just curious about it. I'm not sure. I mean, does anyone actually know who I am? So it's kind of like I said, my career has kind of been. I don't showcase a lot of my work. I started doing a lot of music, I did a lot of portraits, and I've kind of been working for like the last 2.5 years. So I'm kind of ready to just starting to branch out again. So I don't know. What do you think? I've got a logo that's like a nice big KC and look, that kind of put on everything, and it's like a good watermark. But otherwise, I'm curious about what you're doing.
Well, there you have it.
I think if you've got a unique name, then stick with it. If you're John Smith, maybe think of
maybe think of a brand name.
Although John
That's really understated.
Pretty badass. Yeah. I'm sorry. Look, I think we've done it. Thank you for coming. Please give our panel a big round of applause and thank you for joining us. Hopefully, they don't have anywhere to go.